We moved into a new home. But something evil moved into us. True horror story. When a family finally finds their dream home, they expect safety, comfort, and a future filled with happiness. But sometimes, a home doesn't just welcome you, it chooses you. And it never lets go. This true horror story proves that the most terrifying hauntings aren't about what lurks in the shadows. It's about what follows you into the light. Subscribe now if you're truly brave enough to hear what came next. The Turner family thought they had escaped their old troubles when they signed the papers for the house on Willow Ridge Lane. A fresh start was exactly what they needed. The father, Michael, wanted peace after years of working late nights and missing birthdays. His wife, Claire, longed for a place where their children could sleep without hearing traffic or sirens. Their children, Lily and Aiden, imagined fields to play in and forests to explore. The house promised all of it. A beautiful, aging structure surrounded by tall oaks that whispered when the wind blew. From the first night, the house felt strange. Not broken or dangerous, just aware. The air seemed to hold its breath whenever someone entered a room. Dust clung to corners where sunlight refused to reach, no matter how bright the day was. Michael chalked it up to the adjustment of living somewhere old, somewhere with history. Old homes made old sounds, but this one made new sounds too. Footsteps when no one walked. Whispering when wind didn't move. The children complained that their rooms felt too cold, even when the heat blasted through the vents. Claire noticed the walls creaked in patterns that almost resembled speech. Still, they tried to embrace their new reality. It was the basement that bothered Michael the most. The door didn't sit right on its hinges, like it had been forced closed too many times. The key rusted in his hand the first time he tried to unlock it. The light switch didn't work, but he swore he saw shapes shift at the edge of his sight whenever he peered down the stairs. He told himself he was simply tired. He needed rest. That was what this home was supposed to give them. But rest never came. Claire began waking in the middle of the night with a stabbing dread she couldn't explain. She would sit up, gasping, certain someone stood at their bedroom door. Michael would find himself downstairs with no memory of walking there. He would stare at the basement door, hand hovering just above the knob. The children began sleepwalking, always toward the same spot, the bottom of the stairs leading into the dark. Lily complained first about the voice. She said it called her name in a way that sounded almost like singing, but not a kind song. A melody that promised secrets no child should ever want to hear. Aiden became terrified of mirrors, screaming whenever he caught his reflection at night. He said he saw someone standing behind him, smiling too wide. Michael and Claire tried to reassure them, but their own fear grew silently. Something unseen was spreading in the home, like humidity after a storm, thick, clinging, impossible to ignore. It wasn't haunting them. It was learning them. One evening, Michael found a locked drawer built into the basement door. Curiosity overcame his caution. Inside were photographs, faded images of a different family. A father, mother, 2 children, posed in front of the same house. He almost smiled until he noticed the children's eyes. Their expressions didn't match the forced smiles on their lips. Their eyes looked terrified. Then he found the final photograph. The family sitting around a dinner table, but the father's face was blurred, stretched unnaturally as if the camera resisted capturing him. Over the next few days, the house became unpredictable. Doors opened on their own, not violently, but with a slow patience that suggested invitation rather than force. The children's belongings moved from room to room, rearranged in unsettling patterns that no one admitted to making. At dinner, the lights dimmed until they could barely see each other's faces, and every shadow seemed to shiver as though breathing. Claire found herself losing track of time, staring into corners for minutes that felt like seconds. When she snapped out of it, her heart would pound, as if waking from a nightmare she couldn't remember. When he showed Claire the photographs, the temperature dropped so fast she could see her breath. The family tried keeping close together, hoping unity would protect them, but even when they sat side by side, a strange loneliness crept between them. It felt like the house was gently pulling them apart, studying their weaknesses, waiting for the moment one of them would break away completely. Every minute inside felt less like living and more like surrendering. The lights flickered, and the walls seemed to pulse. Claire insisted they leave immediately, But when they tried to open the front door, it refused to budge. Michael pulled until his muscles burned, but the handle only groaned in response. The children cried, hugging each other, begging to go home. Claire felt the house shift around them, tightening, closing like jaws. That night, Michael had a dream that did not feel like a dream. He stood in the basement, darkness wrapped around him like a living thing. A shape emerged, tall and distorted, its features hidden. He couldn't see its face, but he felt its grin. It leaned close, something cold brushing against his ear, and even though no voice was heard, a message throbbed through his mind. The house is not haunted. The house is alive. And it is hungry. He woke on the basement floor. The door above him slammed shut, and everything went black. The stairs creaked under something descending toward him. Panic surged, but he couldn't move. The air pressed on him, thick and heavy. A whisper crawled through the dark. He thought of his family asleep upstairs, unaware of what he had awakened. When he finally managed to stand, he raced up the stairs. The door opened easily this time, as though the house had allowed it. He locked it behind him, chest heaving. But he felt different. Something cold clung to his bones. His reflection in a hall mirror seemed to flicker behind a layer of shadow. His smile looked wrong. Claire met him, startled, asking what had happened. He told her nothing, claiming exhaustion. But inside, fear burrowed deep. Because for a moment, just a moment, he didn't feel frightened in the basement. He felt at home. Upstairs, the children slept uneasily, their breathing shallow, their dreams restless. Claire didn't sleep at all, staring at the ceiling and listening for any movement in the house. She felt watched, not by eyes but by walls. The home they prayed would save them had begun its work. And the first piece it swallowed was Michael. Michael woke before dawn, sitting upright in the living room, unable to remember falling asleep there. His body felt rigid, like someone had moved him during the night. His hands were dirty, streaked with soil from outside. Claire approached him slowly, worry etched deep in her expression. She asked if he was sleepwalking again, but he barely heard her. His attention was fixed on the basement door. The wood looked fresher than before, as if the house had fed on something. It only took a moment before he realized what that something was. Michael spent the morning trying to pretend everything was normal. He made breakfast, forcing a smile as the children stared at him with unease. Lily whispered that he sounded different when he spoke. Aiden wouldn't sit near him at all, keeping Claire between them at every chance. Claire studied him without blinking. She could sense a change that went far beyond exhaustion. Michael felt it too. Every time he passed a reflective surface, he glanced away quickly, afraid he would see himself wrong. Afraid he'd see the thing that had followed him up from the basement. The house continued tightening around them, closing off any safe space. The children's toys now appeared stacked in unsettling shapes, spirals leading toward darkened corners or symbols none of them recognized. Furniture shifted slightly each night. Closets cracked open on their own. The temperature dropped room by room, as if the air itself recoiled from the family's presence. Claire tried calling for help, but the phones crackled endlessly with static. Every number she dialed looped back to their own line. When she opened her phone camera, the screen flickered, and a shape lurked behind Michael in every frame, even when nothing stood there. Michael found himself drawn to the basement again and again. He told himself he only needed to investigate, to understand, to protect his family. But deep down, he knew something was calling him, not asking, but commanding. At night, when he tried to resist, sharp pressure would grip his chest until he could barely breathe. It was like the house squeezed his ribs every time he disobeyed. One evening, Claire confronted him. She begged him to fight whatever force was changing him. But her voice sounded muffled, distant, as though he listened through thick glass. His heart beat slower and slower, replaced by a new rhythm, steady and cold. The children huddled together, terrified of the man who looked like their father but didn't feel like him. His footsteps became too heavy. His breathing too quiet. His movements too controlled. At times, his face would freeze in a smile that had no warmth at all. The basement door creaked that night, not by accident, but with intention. Michael walked toward it. Claire grabbed his arm, but his strength was no longer human. He pushed her aside gently, Yet she stumbled as if shoved by invisible force. The house wanted him below. It wanted the others upstairs, afraid. The basement swallowed him again. When Michael returned hours later, his eyes held something predatory. He didn't blink enough. He didn't speak unless prompted. The family ate in silence while he sat motionless, staring too long at the children as though calculating some unknown equation. Claire shivered, feeling that whatever sat across from them wore her husband like a mask. Days blurred. Time lost shape. The windows looked darker outside than the sky should allow, as if night waited around the house even during the brightest hours. Aiden refused to sleep alone anymore. Lily cried when Michael came near. Claire locked the bedroom door at night, praying that her husband, her real husband, still existed somewhere inside. The answer came one night in the form of a whisper. Claire woke abruptly, drenched in cold sweat. Someone stood outside the bedroom door. The handle turned slowly. A scraping sound followed, like fingernails dragging down the wood. Claire rushed to the children's room, heart pounding as she shoved furniture in front of the door and held them close. On the other side, Michael's breathing grew louder, deeper, unfamiliar. He no longer slept. He watched. Over the next hours, Claire planned their escape. She waited until Michael disappeared into the basement again before gathering the children quietly. The house groaned, floorboards tightening with pressure as though sensing treachery. The front door still wouldn't open, no matter how desperately she pulled. Then she noticed the windows weren't locked anymore. With trembling hands, she pushed one open. A freezing gust blasted in, carrying a faint voice, almost laughing. She helped Lily and Aiden outside first, urging them to run toward the road. She climbed through next, turning back to grab her bag, only to freeze in horror. Michael stood in the hallway, watching her through the window. His head tilted unnaturally, his eyes entirely black. The shape behind him, the one she had glimpsed in reflections, finally stepped into view, tall and twisted, its shadow stretching like fingers toward the glass. Claire let go. She tumbled into the grass. The children screamed for her to run. Behind them, the house seemed to exhale, a low rumble vibrating through the ground. They sprinted down the driveway, barefoot and terrified. The lights inside flickered chaotically. Windows rattled. Something pounded against the walls from within. Claire didn't look back until they reached the road. Michael stood in the doorway now, or what wore Michael's body did. His silhouette loomed too large. His arms too long. His shadow crawled ahead of him across the ground like a living creature trying to escape. Claire dragged the children farther, screaming for help as they neared a passing car. The driver slammed the brakes when he saw them running wildly in the middle of the street. By the time she pointed back at the house, it was quiet. The front door swung slightly in the wind. Michael was gone, and the house waited, patient as ever. Emergency workers searched the home for hours. They found no sign of Michael. The basement reeked of cold air and stillness. The walls looked newly built, as if sealing away a secret they refused to reveal. Claire insisted her husband never left that house, but no one believed the truth she had lived. She moved somewhere bright, somewhere loud, somewhere with neighbors close enough to hear them scream. Lily and Aiden still wake some nights claiming they hear footsteps outside. They say a figure stands in the yard sometimes, staring up at their windows, smiling too wide, breathing too quiet. Sometimes, the front door is found unlocked in the morning. Claire wakes in the living room with dirt on her hands. The house changed them. It marked them. It isn't finished. And somewhere, deep within its walls, something patient waits for the day it can bring them home again. Some homes hold memories. Others hold hunger. And this house isn't done feeding yet. If you want more true horror stories like this, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because darkness doesn't knock before entering. It waits inside you. Don't let it. More terrifying stories are coming, and trust me, you don't want to face them alone.